Okay, so after a week of listening to this new Kendrick Lamar record, I feel like he has enough studio albums for me to give him a proper ranking. This list is going to showcase how I feel about these albums personally and not necessarily a best of. So if you have your own list, go ahead and let me know what that is in the comments. Again, I'm only going over the 5 studio albums, so projects like Untitled, Unmastered, and Overly Dedicated are not going to be included. This is the same tactic I use when I rank Nas's albums, so with that being said, let's go. At number 5, I got Damn. This is Kendrick's most commercial record to date, and when it came out, I felt it was cool, but it really didn't just connect with me long term. Now to be fair, I don't think Kendrick Lamar has a bad record, because I know a lot of people that would rank this as their number 1. It's definitely a more accessible listen, especially coming off of his 2 previous projects, To Pimp a Butterfly and Untitled Unmastered. I love the track DNA, especially when the beat switches. He just takes it to a whole different level. But if I had to pick my 3 favorite tracks, I would have to go with Fear, although I feel like the album starts to taper off towards the end. I think that track really sticks out. I love how it broadens the scope of new fears entering your life as you get older in age. You know, there's the fears of your parents, there's the fears of, being in your early 20s and being out and about and something might happen to you, the fear of having money and people coming at you, with their intentions being unclear. This song overall is just a very clever concept. Next up, I would go with Element. Strong single, strong message. Period. I ain't gotta say nothing else. But my favorite track is gonna be Feel. I really do love the spoken word aspects that Kendrick Lamar brings to the table. I grew up on Def Poetry Jam. I was introduced to, Sonia Sanchez and Saul Williams way back in the day. So just spoken word, poetry, deep thought has always been something that really just piqued my interest. And the message in this song, ain't nobody praying for me. Like, what? I once saw this saying where it was, no one's ever really proud of you. They're just surprised that you keep doing what you're doing. And that is kind of what this song reminds me of. Well, at least that line. All right, next up, I got To Pimp a Butterfly. Now, I know what a lot of people are going to say. And I agree. This is probably one of the greatest, if not the greatest, hip-hop album of the 2010s. I personally feel that this is the album that should have won the Pulitzer Prize, just to be fair. I think giving it to Damn was kind of a sympathy vote, but it should have gone to this record. And there's another piece to this that I'm going to mention later on in the video, so stay with me. If this was a best of list, I would definitely rank this higher, especially, with the album cover, the concept, the last track with the Pac snippets. It's just an incredible body of work. But I don't see myself going to it as much as I've been going to the records that I have above it. It's no secret at this point that I'm a Nas fan. And when I talk to people who aren't Nas fans, they always tell me that, man, every time I listen to his music, I feel like I'm doing homework or something like that. And I never understood what the hell they were talking about until I listened to this record. I feel like every time I go into this record, I have to be completely tuned in, completely immersed in it. And sometimes I just want to listen to music and vibe. So if I put this on, it's going from Wesley's Theory to Mortal Man. There is no skips. I can't just, let me listen to this song. I can't do that with this record. I have to go from top to bottom and I have to listen to it all. I have to take it all in. Pause. But my top 3 tracks, I'm gonna go with Blacker the Berry, the Hard record, You, which again, the concept behind it, the drunkenness, the ice in the glass, the drunken crying is just perfect. But my favorite track should be no surprise to anyone. I'm gonna go with How Much a Dollar Costs. Another great concept. Yeah, I don't think I have to say anything about that. You already know. So let's move on. All right, so number 3, I got Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers. And this is where things get interesting because I know the album's only been out for a week. And this is where I'm gonna revisit why To Pimp a Butterfly is where it is on this list. There may be some recency bias here, but I am gonna say that this record reminds me of To Pimp a Butterfly, but it's more accessible than To Pimp a Butterfly. And maybe I'm just going back to it because it's fresh. That may wane over time. Also, just the concept behind this album is also something that I'm gravitating towards. It really does capture the moment that we're in as a culture as far as mental health, meditation, therapy, relationship issues, all these things that I've either witnessed, been a part of. So maybe it could be a situation to where it's relatable to me in that sense at the moment, and that's why I appreciate it more, and that's why I rank it to where it is. Or like you said, it could be some recency bias. It's new, it's fresh, I'm loving the tracks, and that's kind of where I'm sitting with Mr. Morale right now. So yeah, I put that at number 3. My top 3 tracks on this project, I'm gonna start off with We Cry Together. Again, I love concept records. I think Taylor Page did an amazing job going back and forth between her and Kendrick, although, it's obvious he wrote this shit. But the performance on both sides, especially on her side, was pretty impressive. Plus, I got a good laugh at the end, so that was cool. Next up, I got N95. And I shouldn't have to say anything. You know that this shit is tough. You know it's tough. So I'm just gonna move on, save you some time. Number 3 is gonna be kind of a toss-up. Again, this record is very new, but I'm juggling in between Silent Hill and United in Grief. The hook on Silent Hill has been stuck in my head ever since I heard it. It just sounds funny. It's funny to imitate. It's just funny. I'm not the biggest Kodak Black fan. I'm not really that familiar with his music, and this verse, although it's decent, it's not gonna convert me into start listening to his records. But I think he did a good job as far as his overall delivery on this one. The reason I'm juggling this track with United in Grief is because United in Grief gives me this meditated state. It's a very powerful way to open up the album. For some reason, it gives me this Radiohead vibe, like some Kid A type of vibe where it just draws you in. The production evolves as it continues to grow on you. So I may have just talked this into being number 3 officially. So yeah, so Silent Hill just might have to move aside. I'm going with United in Grief. All right, let's see how many dislikes we can get. Number 2, I got Good Kid, Mad City. This record is easily the Illmatic of its generation. In my Nas ranking, I mentioned that listening to Illmatic made me feel like I was in New York. And when I actually went to New York, I felt like I was in that record. With this record, although I didn't grow up on the West Coast, it feels like something I actually lived. The additional album cover for this record is the picture of a minivan. And there's a storyline throughout this record where he's, coasting with his friends in a minivan. This is exactly what I was doing in high school. My boy would actually take his mom's minivan, pick us up, and then we would just ride through the city doing the most craziest shit you ever thought of. Rest in peace, Miss Kaiser. So if we're doing this shit and Kendrick is doing this shit, then I can only imagine all the other people who were teenagers in the early to mid 2000s who this also resonated with. It really does feel like it captured a moment. And I'm not gonna try to compare or put myself on a pedestal, but it definitely felt like I was the Kendrick in that group, to where, yeah, I can hold my own, but I'm on some nerd shit. Like, everybody knew I was a writer. Everyone knew that I had writing capabilities. So it was like, I'm not just going along with the motions of things. I'm not just following the group. There are pros and cons to this. There's an analytical side to all of this. My actions now, how does that dictate my future? And those are the kind of conversations that you have when you're internalizing, figuring yourself out at that age. So it's a very, very well-conceived concept that hits on a personal level. It's like Trey from Boys in the Hood or C from A Bronx Tale. Either you're self-evaluating and making a decision, or you have great leaders in your ear who are helping you evaluate what you could be, instead of following suit with people in your same age group who are still developing themselves. My 3 favorite tracks off of this project are going to be Bitch Don't Kill My Vibe, Money Trees, and Mad City. But why is it number 2 if I feel so connected to it? Because there is no better feeling than discovering a new artist. And that's exactly what happened to me when I first heard the number 1 pick, Section 80. So I used to rap, and there was this guy I worked with at a previous job who also rapped, and we would just trade off music and stuff like that, and he had asked me like, yo, have you heard this new Kendrick Lamar album, Section 80? And me, I didn't want to feel like I'm missing anything, so I fronted, and I was like, yeah, I heard it, yeah, that shit is ill, As soon as he walked away, I looked up the record, downloaded it, and was blown away. I felt like Charles Barkley when he described in The Last Dance what it was going up against Michael Jordan in the finals. There was finally somebody in my age group that I could undoubtedly admit that, yo, this guy is just better than me. And that's no disrespect to anybody else, but when I looked at J. Cole, I'm like, oh, I can easily go back and forth with this guy, like no question, or anyone else for that matter. But in my age group, I was like, yo, this guy's just on a different level, so I had to respect it. And it was more surrounded around the concepts, not necessarily the lyrical capabilities, although Kendrick has that in his arsenal as well. I remember my girl at the time, she wanted to go to a Drake concert like in February of 2012. And me, I'm not really the biggest Drake fan, so I really wasn't that eager to go. But when I found out that the openers were going to be A$AP Rocky and Kendrick Lamar, I bought tickets immediately. And I saw Kendrick 2 more times that year. One was during the weekend when Good Kid, Mad City actually dropped. In the span of 8 months, I saw this guy go from coaching his audience what his hooks were before he performs, just so they can sing along with him, to becoming one of the most iconic MCs of his generation. And that was a really good time and very interesting to see. So for me, the album that introduced me to Kendrick Lamar will always outweigh the album that reminds me of my teenage years. With that being said, my top 3 for this record are going to be Rigor Mortis, Ronald Reagan Era, and The Spiteful Chant. I also want to give a shout out to ADHD and High Power. But what do you think, and what's your list? Let me know in the comments. Also, what are your favorite songs off of each project? I'd love to see what you guys have to say. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe. I'll see you all next time. Peace.